Hi, my name is Monica Wong, and I'm going to be talking about the Achumawi tribe. Other spellings that show up have a O in place of the U, or have a J in place of the CH, but I'm just going to be using the spelling with the U. They're also known as the Pit River tribe. They are located, as you can see on the left, in that black area, and the picture on the right is the area blown up. In the west, Mount Shasta and Lassen Peak serve as the northwest and southwest corners of the territory, and the eastern boundary is separating the Pitt River territory from the northern Paiute is the Warner Range of mountains. If you can see on the edge right here, this mountain range. Basic info. So as you can see in the last picture, the area is broken up into parts. These are the separations of the 11 independent bands that form this tribe. They're collectively known as Achumawi, and also there is one particular band that is called the Achumawi. All bands speak the Achumawi language, with the exception of the Atsujewi and Apurige. Sorry for my pronunciation. They speak Atsujewi, but they are bilingual, so they also understand and speak Achumawi to the other bands. The language family, they are part of the Achumawi language is part of the Palanihan, which is a branch of the Hokan language family. So about the Achumawi language, first of all, it's a tone language, which means that certain if you say a word with pitch going up, pitch going down, like a deeper or higher pitch, it changes the meaning. I'm not exactly sure about, or I didn't find any examples or sound clips, but personal example, Cantonese, which is what I speak, is also a tonal language. And so if, for example, there's, if you say go, 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 they all have different meanings. So that's probably what occurs in the Achumawi language also. Next, their language is polysynthetic, which means that they string a bunch of smaller words together into one big word, which has the same meaning as like a whole sentence in our language. And lastly, free word order, which means that it's not necessarily in subject, verb, object like it is in English. It may vary depending on the sentence, or it doesn't matter what order they put words in. Oop. All right, hunting. They used a variety of different tools to hunt many different animals. They had the bow and arrow. The arrow shaft was made of serviceberry or reed with a wooden foreshaft and arrowhead of obsidian or flint. The arrows carried in an entire uncut skin of an animal such as a raccoon, mink, or a coyote. And the bow was made of yew and juniper. They did regular line and hook fishing, and the fish hooks were made of curved pieces of deer bone. They also had fishing spears as well as fishing nets. They had 3 types of dip nets. Dip nets, they have it's kind of like a bag, and they have like rods attached to it, and you just basically scoop into the water. There's also gill net, and then there's a seine net. And seine net is like a long net that could stretch across a whole stream, and two people would hold the net upright, and then some other people would drive the fish or any other marine creatures towards the net, and they would catch them that way. There are also fish traps, basketry traps made of willow rods and pine root weft, and weirs used in tandem with fish traps. Weirs are basically similar to dams, but a little bit shorter than dams. The difference between weirs and dams is dam completely blocks water, and there's only one point where water flows through, whereas weirs, water flows over it. So they would just use that to drive the fish, so that the only way that they could go was into the trap. Achumawi basketry. So their primary way of making baskets was using twined weaving. As you can see from this graphic in the bottom right, it shows how to do twine weaving. So basically there's there's vertical pieces, and you have horizontal pieces that weave between the vertical pieces. The general shape of their baskets were a flat bottom, slightly rounded sides, wide openings, and pretty shallow. So there's two examples of the basic baskets in the top two pictures. They had conical shaped burden baskets, which they carried on their back with a strap going across their head. And they would use this when they're gathering seeds or other materials. And they also had storage baskets, which were large and rounded with a smaller opening. As you can see in the bottom picture, it kind of tapers in at the top, but it still has that flat bottom. For subsistence, they used acorns. They ground it up with mortar and pestle and leached it with water to rid it of tannic acid. Most of the nuts that we eat on a normal basis have tannic acid, but in a very small amount that is our body is able to process. But acorns have too much tannic acid, which is why they need to be leached in order for it to be safe for us to eat. They also made pinole, which was flour made from various seeds, just whatever seeds, grass seeds they could find around them. A combination of that with other plants such as tarweed and sage, other herbs to make it more flavorful. Also, they hunted ruminants like deer, antelope, and elk. They hunted for deer in various ways. I'm sorry for the wording there. They used fire to drive the deer and sort of surround them. Also, in the winter, the Achumawi made and wore snowshoes so that they could stay on top of the snow and move quickly, while the deer might struggle to move through snow because, their feet would sink in. And so they were able to surround the deer in the winter as well. They also hunted rabbits, fish, as we saw with the from the last slide with the variety of fishing tools, and other waterfowl. Fish and waterfowl were probably the most important things and most abundant things they hunted, but there are also many other things that they might occasionally supplement their diet with, like badgers, gophers, mink, cougars, otters, skunks, wildcats, wood rats, and grasshopper and yellow jacket larvae. So here are pictures of their houses. Well, the left is what they would have for the winter, and the right is their summer dwellings. The winter dwellings were usually about 15 feet square, and houses or could be up to twice that size, and the bigger houses were also used for ceremonial assemblies. Inside the house, they would dig about 3 feet deep in the whole ground space, so it would be like lower than the outside, and they would have 2 posts inside which would support the various slabs of wood that you see on the outside. And they also had a ladder on the side, and they would climb up and enter through the top, and they also had the hole in the top for smoke to escape. And they would also use grass as thatching and cover the house with a coat of earth. The summer hut was a conical teepee covered in tool mats. So during the winter, the bands would live scattered along the streams, maybe like 1 or 2 houses here or there, no more than 4 or 5 in the same area, and each house contained several related families. And in the spring, people would congregate and camp at various root digging sites. In the summer, they would travel around and accumulate food for the winter stores. So the winter dwellings were much more of a permanent settlement. In the summer, they moved around to hunt and prepare for the winter. Some of their mythology. A lot of commonality between a lot of Native American mythology is the coyote is an important and widespread figure. A lot of the times it is a trickster, fool, or a hero. I found 2 different tales, Achumawi tales. There's a lot more out there, but I found 2 that I read, and one of them, the Fury of the Loon Woman. The Loon Woman is the coyote old man's daughter, except she was furious because there was this one other person who raped her but would not marry her, and she became angry and she set the earth on fire basically, and the other in order to escape, they threw a rope up to the sky, and they were climbing into the sky, and the others were telling the coyote old man to hurry up and come up the rope, and if he looked back, then it would make the others fall off the rope too, except Coyote Man was grieving that his daughter was going to be left behind, so he looked back down, and so some of the others fell down to the earth, and so they could view the coyote as a fool for not saving himself, but he could also be seen as a hero in a sense for wanting to stay loyal to his daughter. Also, a common thing I saw in both the myths is that there was always a woman who was menstruating, and that caused some problems, or it was bringing bad luck with the hunting. So that's probably why they had menstruation huts, because of that belief. So they had to separate the women so that they would not disturb or their menstruation would not disturb the luck of the men hunting. So this was unexpected to me, that they had a lot of relations with neighboring tribes. They intermarried and shared elements of material culture and mythology with their Maidu neighbors. And they also traded with various groups. They got tobacco seed from Shasta Indians, which was the little bit of agriculture that they did. It was not really agriculture. They would just sow the seeds where a log had been burned. And they also traded furs and bows for clamshell beads made by more Western tribes. Like the more Western tribes would trade with the tribes that are a little bit more inland, and then those tribes would trade with the Achumawi. There are also some wars in between the groups. The earliest known war was involving Achumawi was with the Paiute, and they also had a long-standing dispute with the Modoc, because the Modoc stole an Achumawi woman. So each year they would send war parties back and forth, and it finally, I'm not sure when it started, but it finally concluded in 1873. Also, contact with Europeans. Early on, there are some fur traders that are going by. It was not too disruptive, but there are much more heavy flow of people coming in because of the gold rush. Obviously, there was one encounter in which two Achumawi were employed kind of as ranchers, and they were supposed to round up a couple of horses, and they couldn't find the horses, so they were killed by their employer, and the Achumawi wanted to avenge them. So then it became kind of a mini war dispute between the employer and employer's family and the Achumawi. Also, in the fall of 1857, about 50 Achumawi were taken to the Round Valley Reservation in Mendocino County, where now 500 Achumawi reside today. It was very surprising to me to find that there's only 5 reservations in California, because of the vast majority, the diversity, that's the word I'm looking for. The diversity in California is so immense, and the fact that all these groups of people were condensed down into only 5 reservations, and they had to interact with people who had very different culture and language from them. But at least in the Round Valley Reservation, they were able to, or they intermarried, and they have like a shared culture between all the tribes that are in the Round Valley Reservation. So now, the Achumawi now, in pre-contact times, there are approximately 3,000 speakers of Achumawi and Atsujewi combined, but now there are less than a dozen. From what I saw on another site, it said that the year 2000 there's only 8 members, or yeah, 8 speakers. Sorry, 8 speakers. There's a development of an app to help people learn Achumawi, and today there are around 1,800 members in the tribe, and they have various rancherias like the Alturas, Indian Rancheria, Big Bend Rancheria, Likely Rancheria, Lookout Rancheria, Montgomery Creek Rancheria, XL Ranch, and many more. And that's it. Thank you for listening.